Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be heard each week or seen on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can also listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also get more information and listen to previous shows at our website, www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here at my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And for the first half, it's my pleasure to introduce, we'll call her a new friend, Cindy Pike. And Cindy, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this.
Hey.
Okay. And Cindy took over family business back in 2021 when her father became ill. She renamed the business and branded it with the love of Jeeps and four-wheel off-roading vehicles in mind. She and her crew work on all types of cars and trucks, doing general maintenance and repairs, but she loves working on Jeeps. And the question I always ask when I start off is, in terms of a child, you grew up where?
I grew up here in Asheville.
Okay. And as a girl growing up in Asheville, did you always love cars and vehicles and Jeeps?
Yes, for about 35 years, I've always loved Jeeps. I remember when I was 16 years old, I wanted a Jeep so bad. I went to the dealership and actually test drove one. They actually let me test drive one at 16. I drove down to my dad's shop and he said, "Where in the world did you get that Jeep?" I said, "Let me test drive it." He's like, "Take that Jeep back and have them to call me." So needless to say, I've loved Jeeps for a long time. Just being outdoors, growing up in Asheville around the mountains, it's always been a passion of mine. But you know what, Blaine, I didn't get my very first Jeep until I turned 50 years old.
Really? Oh, I was going to ask you, how come, why the delay?
Just over the years, I moved away for about 8 years to Myrtle Beach and lived there and worked and everything. And I was like, well, it's just not the right time to have a Jeep. And then I had a family, met my husband of 18 years. And I'm like, well, let's get a minivan. So finally, as they've grown older, I've decided last year at 50, I would have my very first Jeep.
But what was it? I'm trying to figure out, what was the appeal of the Jeep per se? What drew you to it?
That's an interesting question. I've always just liked the way they looked. They were always different. I've always recognized a Jeep on the road because their headlights are so unique. And I love the 7-slot grill. My mom had a Jeep whenever I was little, whenever we lived at the beach. So maybe that's where the passion started. But just being able to get off road and have that freedom, and the Jeep community in general is just an amazing community to be a part of. They do a lot of different things for the community, and I believe as a small business, this is something I want to be a part of. But there's Jeep waves, there's ducking the Jeeps, and it's just a fun community to be a part of.
I should have asked you to bring a picture of the Jeep, because I spoke with you a couple of weeks ago. We were speaking, and then I walked down and saw that Jeep. That's a pretty impressive looking Jeep. I love it. You don't have a picture handy, do you? I should have asked you.
I do. Can I go off camera and get it?
Yeah, I'll just talk a little bit as you go off camera, but
Okay.
It's such a cool thing. I should mention that I got to meet Cindy a couple of weeks ago with work I do for the Small Business Development Center at AB Tech, and she came in and we were talking about her business. And it's just, when I heard about this business, I said, wow, this is kind of a cool business. And you'll see in a second, Cindy has this tremendous passion for the business. And then wait, I saw this, I fell in love with this. That's and what was incredible, it's brand new. How old is that one?
This one's actually a 2013.
Yeah, wow, you really keep it up pretty nicely, do you?
I try to, because for me it's an advertising piece, and it's something that I enjoy driving, and showing people what kind of different things you can do to your Jeeps, how to really get it prepared for off-road. You can also do it as a daily driver, but still have some modifications that you like, but also customization. You'll see a lot of Jeeps that have certain colors, like my Jeep is white, but I could have red accents, purple accents, green accents. And so I call that customization. Everybody loves to customize their Starbucks coffee. Well, you can customize Jeeps and your cars and everything with special headlights and things like that.
Now I have to ask you about that Jeep. It's funny. I fell in love with it. I saw it. I mean, it's not a small little. There are different size Jeeps. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty big Jeep you have, is it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have a 2.5-inch lift with 35s, which is not your normal size Jeep that comes off the showroom floor at a dealership. So they
And
come in all sizes.
talk about the Jeep. Do you have a name for it?
Yes, it's called Magic Act.
Okay, I love it. And so I want to talk a little bit about the customization. So that's one of the things your firm can do. Your firm can customize Jeeps. Can you
Yeah.
customize other vehicles as well?
Yes, we can customize RAV4s, like Jim mentioned. We've also done Ford Excursions. We've done Subarus. We've got a Prism. Let's see, Prism. Prius. I'm sorry, Prius. There's a Prius customer that would love to lift their vehicle as well.
And when you talk about customization, what exactly is that?
You can get different size lifts, like 2, 4, 6-inch lift on your vehicle to have better clearance if you're going off-road. You can also change up your bumpers. The different bumpers help with being sturdy, being strong. When you have a larger tire on your vehicle, you typically have to change the back bumper to support that. And you can get different side steps, so it makes it easier to off-road with. Also, if your Jeep is taller, they can have different steps on them. And a lot of people customize their wheels. They customize their hoods. So people that have soft tops, hard tops, they can customize those as well. A lot of people customize their grills. So you can really, change the whole appearance of your vehicle, with special lighting, fenders, bumpers, things like that.
Now, the vehicle I saw that you have you customized it as well?
Yes.
What
Yeah.
did you do on yours?
On mine, I tried to focus on Rough Country and Oracle. Those are two main brands that we use for our lighting and also for off-roading supplies, accessories. So I have a bumper, a winch, Oracle headlights that shine brighter. I have a light bar from Aerolids. And also light bars are known, if you have them on your vehicle, to whistle while you drive. So we have these things called silencers that go over the Aerolids light bar, so it doesn't whistle whenever you drive. So there's that. And of course, with the lift, you have to have typically better braking system. You also have to have better shocks. So all those are good, better, and best. Like if you have a budget or it's just a daily drive and you want to do a little something, you can do that. But you can also do serious off-roading, which changes your suspension and your shocks and lots of different technical terms my mechanics like to use.
Well, no, I'm impressed. You seem to know the terms pretty well yourself. And that segues into the question, Cindy, that as a girl you grew up, what got you into the business, or how did you fall into it? Did you always want to be in the business?
That's an interesting question, Blaine. Whenever my father got sick last year, and he had run the business for 14 years, but he's always been in the automotive industry. He had H&S Auto Parts down on Riverside Drive for many years. He also had a tire shop on Haywood Road. So he's been a part of this community for a long time in the vehicle industry. Well, he'd been here for 14 years on Lester Highway, and he got sick, and I'm like, do you want to keep the business open? Do you want to close it? Like, he was old enough to retire anyway. And he said, well, if you want to keep it open, you can. And so I decided to, and it's always kind of been a family owned business. And my cousin is my service writer. His name is Kevin Smith, and he has been around the industry for a long time. His dad and my dad worked together. And so it seems fitting that we're working together now. It's kind of cool. So my goal is to, make my dad proud and can kind of continue on his business and his passion for vehicles. And we're just doing it in a different way with Jeeps. And of course, we work on all kinds of vehicles. But Jeeps are a passion.
So when you were a girl growing up, did you work in the auto industry at all?
I worked a little bit when I moved back after 9/11. I moved back from Myrtle Beach. I helped them at Asheville Auto Parts, and I delivered parts. So I got to know a lot of parts places around, and mechanic shops and things like that. But I did that for about a year, and then I went back into the retail industry that I basically grew up in.
So when you got involved, then took over when your dad got sick. We should mention, first of all, one of the great names I think of a business. I'll let you mention it. Just love the first time I saw it. Was it always that name, or did you change that?
Get Lifted Tire and Alignment is a new name. My husband actually came up with the name. Get Lifted, which describes how you lift the vehicles, but it's also a passion of ours as being a Christian family. We wanted to lift other ones up as well. So that's our goal behind our business. So,
And she mentioned, though, it's not just the accessories for the Jeeps and other vehicles, but you do a lot more. And talk a little bit about that too. So it's tire alignment, but you were telling me that time we met, it's a lot more than just tire alignment. You do a whole bunch of different things. Is that correct?
yes. We do brakes. We do lots of different lighting, which you can kind of see behind me. We have some different lighting options. RGB and halo lights are very popular for lots of different vehicles, not just off-road vehicles. But we do AC work. We do lots of suspension work. We're called Get Lifted, but we can also lower vehicles, which is I noticed has become very popular.
Wait, why would somebody lower the vehicle?
Just for fun, just to have something different, to customize their truck or their car. I see it a lot around Asheville, but growing up, probably about 20 years ago, it was really popular, but I'm also seeing that it's gaining popularity now. So my cousins had vehicles lifted, lowered, everything. So for me, he's like my shining star. He can do it all.
And when you're talking about lifting a vehicle, what exactly does that entail?
It's shocks and springs, and what I've learned in the industry, having started it, that it entails different things. Like whenever you get an alignment, because before my dad didn't have an alignment machine, and we invested in our business with the Hunter Engineering alignment equipment, and it is state of the art. My employees get continued education on this alignment machine because vehicles change all the time, and whenever you lift a vehicle, you must align it properly. It goes back to your mathematics of geometry, making sure that everything is where it's supposed to be when it's going down the road, because tires right now are very expensive. And if your vehicle is out of alignment, then your tires will wear funny, and you'll hear noises and thumps and different things. So it's important to kind of take care of the whole package of the vehicle. And so we were very fortunate to invest in that equipment, and it's really helped us to be very well rounded whenever we do lift a vehicle.
How do you know if your vehicle needs alignment?
You'll have it pull. Have you ever had your steering wheel
Right.
pull to the left or the right? You'll get that, and you'll also see the wear on the tires, and that tells you that your vehicle is out of alignment.
How often should you have your car checked for alignment?
I would say once a year. Definitely each time you change your tires. So if you're a busy traveler on the road, you're going to go through tread a lot more quicker with tires. So you need alignment more often, but I would definitely say at least once a year.
Okay. And so also in terms of folks coming to your business, we should, by the way, mention where it is too.
Okay, sure. It's Get Lifted Tire and Alignment off of Lester Highway. It's 859 New Lester Highway. We're right past the Second Ingalls, 3.7 miles out on Lester Highway. And our phone number is 828-683-4347. And we also have a cell phone, which you can text us, because a lot of people like to text nowadays, which is great. That number is 828-337-1751.
Now you repeat that in just a little bit, but back to reaching you, you also, I know you're on social media and you have a pretty active presence on that as well.
Yes.
How would they find you there?
Okay, we have a Facebook page, and it's Get Lifted Tire and Alignment. We have Instagram, which is Get Lifted AVL, which is short for Asheville, just like the airport, AVL. I'm also on LinkedIn, Pinterest. I have a YouTube channel, which I'm working on. So I'm trying to, hit all the different social media platforms.
But I guess it keeps you a little busy though, trying to do like
Yes.
27 different things simultaneously at once. And so it kind of leads into, have you talked a little bit about staff? So you mentioned you have a service rider, and you have
Yes.
right now you have one, how many
Yes.
mechanics?
I have one mechanic, and we've had up to 3 at one time. They leave for different reasons, but better pay, better job. I think our hours are great. We're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I kind of call that banker hours, but I feel like there has to be a balance with family and work. And so those are the hours that we have chosen. And, we have late night drop off, we have a key drop off. But my goal is to have at least 5 mechanics. And right now that's a big goal, but without goals, you don't have achievement.
Well, you also,
so that's what I'm shooting for.
You mentioned in terms of store being on Hendersonville Road, you also have one of the, I think it's a great sign you have up now. And we should talk a little bit about it, because as you're mentioning, you have a staff, but you're welcome to have some more people come on board. And what do you put on the sign? You were telling me off the air. I thought it was very clever. What was it?
Best hours in town.
Okay. And think about that. How many places they don't have to work Saturdays, you don't have to work evenings. It's pretty appealing. I guess the only thing is, it appealed to me, excepting you have to know something about cars, I would imagine, to work there. But one thing's very impressed me also, Cindy, with what you do, and you should tell folks about this as well, is that you constantly are having people go for additional training at your expense and time, right? How important is that in the auto industry?
That is very important, because just like with any industry, continuing education in your field is super important. And, with a lot of these newer vehicles coming out, there's a lot of new information, a lot of new details that need to, you need to learn about. And so, we have a goal in the shop too, to go to SEMA next year, which is all the latest and greatest in automotive industry in Las Vegas. Also, we want to be a part of some of the local shows that happen in North Carolina. And our hunter alignment guy, his name is Justin Allen. He's been a super help. And he actually lets us know when there's shows, there's trade events, there's continuing education. So it's very important to have kind of someone to help guide you in that aspect. And he lets us know when education's happening. And I make sure that my guys are able to attend.
I also read fairly recently, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, that the whole industry is changing so radically in terms of the person who could work, like you said, Dad 30 years ago, 40 years ago, could work on cars. And now half of it, if not more than that, is electronic based, right? That what you could do, a lot of people had to get retrained or learn new skills if they're not familiar with electronics.
Yes.
That changes the whole industry. So people have to get additional training on that as well. In terms of what you also do, I think is pretty cool, supporting the community. What else do you do aside from running the business? How do you support the local community?
Well, I just finished a child safety seat course. So I am a child seat safety certified technician with North Carolina. So the reason why I did that, actually, my job that I left after 17 years to pursue this business full time, she's like, why don't you get into something like that? That way you have an opportunity to help serve your community, which I was thinking that in other ways, like coat drives and working with Evelyn and volunteering and things like that. Whenever she mentioned that, I was like, ooh, that's outside my comfort zone. But what I know about it after doing my training is that I'm helping the community. I'm helping children to be safe. I'm helping to teach parents how to install their child safety seat, and when their child needs to go to the next level, when their child can be out of that safety seat. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity to get exposure to the business, but more importantly, As a mother, it's going to help, save a child's life someday. Because if that child gets in an accident and that seat is unsafe, then they're most likely to get hurt. So the statistics are overwhelming, actually. But I'm so glad I did that. It was super out of my comfort zone. I went to a firehouse locally and did a 4-day course on child seat safety. And it was just so interesting. And I'm so thankful that I did that. But also, that's a great way to give back because you don't charge for it. The people can come in, they can make appointments with me, and we can make sure that their seat is safe. And as their child grows, they can come back and learn how to, reposition the seat, change the seat, when to change it to a booster seat, and that kind of thing. So I'm so excited to be doing that for the community.
So one of the services you offer, I guess, through the business, if somebody has an infant and gets a child seat, they come to you and make an appointment, or how does that work?
Yeah, they can call and make an appointment to have their seat installed. And it's not just me installing it, it's actually me educating the parent on how to install properly. Because, that seat may go from one vehicle to another. And as a child grows very quickly, they'll be changing how the seat sits. It'll be front facing, rear facing, booster seat. All those are, as a mother, I remember just being confused on exactly when to do it, how to do it, what height, what weight. And that's information that I know that I can help teach the parent about. And also there's a lot of recalls on safety seats. So I have that information as well. So I can help be a resource to the community.
And when you think about it, that's something that I guess most people don't think about. It's just, it's funny as you're describing it, Cindy, we learn lots of things in school. We never learn like important stuff, like this is how crucial is this that, can you imagine if every kid graduated high school or college knew how to install the seat, but they don't, it's just, you have to pick it up somewhere. And people, I guess the problem, and that's why it's helpful working with you, is a lot of people just kind of, I guess, try to figure it out themselves. And oftentimes it's wrong.
Right. Yeah. As a mother, I did things wrong as a mother. And I realized that during my training, and it was so eye-opening, and I'm just excited to get started with it and also do community events with Safe Kids. They're located in the Mayheck building, and I'll be working with them, doing different programs and volunteering with them as well. It just helps keep me sharp on different child safety seats because it's unbelievable how many different ones they are.
By the way, and does your organization sell the seats, or people get them elsewhere?
No, they'll buy them from wherever retails them. My goal is just to educate the parent on how to make their child safe in their vehicle.
Okay. By the way, you mentioned an organization, and if you would share it with me off the air or drop me an email, you said you work with, what was the group you mentioned? Safe. What was the name of the group?
It's called Safe Kids.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it. And what do they do?
They do lots of different community events. You can actually, I believe, go there to their place of business to actually get child safety seats. They have some donations. I haven't actually been to the facility, but it's called Safe Kids, and it's located in the Mayheck building in Biltmore. And
it sounds like
train.
Sounds like I should do a show on them. Yeah, that sounds a really cool organization as well.
Yes.
In terms of how is it being a woman running a business, auto business? There aren't too many, are there?
It's very challenging. It's very interesting. But I don't turn wrenches. I call myself PR and payroll. But I tell you what, I've learned that I can go and I can be an NC inspector. I have a notary business. I'm a notary. I have the child seat safety. I'm also doing a windshield defense. I just did my training for that. And what that is over 250,000 Jeep windshields was replaced in 2021. Jeeps have one of the most broken windshields in the car industry. So I have this new film that I apply onto the vehicle, and it lasts up to 18 to 27 months, depending on your driving. And it just helps protect your windshield from the rocks that fly up from either your own vehicle or from another vehicle. My own personal experience with that is that I've had 2 windows replaced in a year, and my daughter's had 3 in 2 years. And it gets expensive, even with insurance. And, we have light bars on our Jeeps, and you have to take those light bars off, and you have to take time to replace the windshield, to let it sit for hours so it cures. And this windshield defense, when I went to a Jeep show and saw this, I was like, I've got to learn how to do this. So that's what I'm bringing to the table for the business, and some of these other offerings and things like that. So I'm really excited to be able to produce for the business.
So this windshield defense system, is this something they can get if they come into your shop? They can get this?
Yes.
Okay. And you raised a point, aside from a cost factor, replacing windows, it's also a time factor, to have to replace a window, inconvenience. And I've
Yes.
never heard of this. Could this be used for other cars or primarily just Jeeps?
The company is actually working on doing technology. It's called Racing Optics. And they're actually working on other vehicles too. But Jeeps, because their windshields are so flat and box shaped, they're one of the most broken windshield in America. But yes, they are working on other vehicles as well. And hopefully I'll get that training as they come out.
I'm very impressed with something else you're saying here, that you're constantly, not only your staff, but you're constantly trying to pick up new skills. Is that
Yes.
something you always want to do in your life, or you just now running this business?
It's just been an eye opener since running this business. I want to be able to support and bring in income myself, as well as doing the PR and payroll. So I wear many different hats, but the mechanicking part is not necessarily one of them. So I feel like I've got to do things and train and learn and step outside my comfort zone to make the industry, to be a part of the industry, because learning to off-road and Jeeping is fun, but I have a showroom also, with lighting and other off-road accessories. So my background is retail. So with that, I've brought the retail part into the business too. So, ordering, trying to have the right amount of inventory on hand for customers to come in and shop. So that's how I've kind of set this particular business apart from other mechanic shops, offering different services.
Where do you see the business going in, say, 5 years from now?
I would love to have those 5 mechanics.
Okay.
I would like to have every single bay busy, being productive. I would love to offer other services as I see fit. There's lots of different things that we can add to our business. One thing that I have a passion about that I would love to learn more about is, people with special needs that need their vehicle customized. Since we are in the customization industry, it would be very neat to learn how to customize their vehicles to meet their special needs. So it's something that's kind of on my goal list, and that's something I would like to be a part of.
And we should mention one other thing when we talk about your business, and again, I'll repeat the name of the business: Get Lifted Tire and Alignment. In some respects, I think I told you this as well. It's almost a little misleading in that you're a lot more than just lifts and alignments. And
Yes.
just kind of, if you can summarize just some of I was so impressed with some of the other services you offer people. If they have a vehicle, it doesn't have to be a Jeep. It can be almost any vehicle. What else
Yes.
can you help people out with?
We can do brakes. We can do anything from simple windshield wipers to a North Carolina inspection that every single person that drives a vehicle in North Carolina has to have every year. Also, something we want to add to our menu is stereos at some point. But, right now it's AC work. We do road force balancing. We do lifts. We do other suspension work. If you just need ball joints, like you come in for an NC inspection and your tire and wheel moves too much, then you need a ball joint. And a ball joint is something that could be very dangerous if it breaks on the road, because your tire and wheel could completely come off your vehicle. And my husband's in the tow truck industry. It's Page's Towing that he works for. He's been working for them for many years, and he's seen many a wheel and tire come off a vehicle because of a ball joint. So, a lot of different suspension work. Of course, the off-roading accessories, the lighting, Two things I would like to mention that we don't do anymore is actually replace entire engines and transmissions. But what's cool about where we rent this space is there's two other bays that some other mechanics work, and they actually do the engine work, transmissions and engine work. So in this industry, I feel like we're very well connected with other small businesses, and I love to support small businesses. So if there's a transmission issue or a complete motor overhaul, I have other mechanics, other businesses that I refer people to.
And one of the nice things I think what I'm hearing you say for dealing with get lifted tire and alignment, it's almost like a one-stop shopping experience, you know, in terms of looking behind you and see some of the stuff you sell in the shop, but they can get stuff at the shop, but then take care of all these other needs kind of at the same time, you know, which is, I guess, kind of convenient. Now, if I can have you just repeat one more time, Cindy Pike, name of the business is Get Lifted Tire and Alignment. Have you do this slowly. The address is where?
It's 859 New Leicester Highway, and that's in Asheville, North Carolina. It's 3.7 miles from Patton Avenue.
Okay, very easy to get to. And I guess, as you said before, the key is you can describe it being relatively close to an Ingalls, but I guess anything in Asheville is relatively close to an Ingalls. And if you don't want to stop in the store, certainly encourage people to do that. They can also reach you. The website was what?
It's getliftedtireandalignment.com.
Okay.
And we are having a new website built. It'll be getliftedavl.com. And that's coming soon. We're going to have e-commerce as well.
Okay. So anyway, I want to thank you for being my guest this first half hour on the Blaine's World podcast. And you could have fooled me, Cindy, for having never done this before. You were great. So thank you very much. And I enjoyed speaking with you. And we'll speak to you hopefully again in person in the not too distant future. So
all right.
Enjoy your new year. I'll speak to you soon. You be well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
As Cindy kind of works her way out of the studio, or I kick her out, whichever comes first. Let me see if I can do this. Get rid of, I'll bring in the other guest. I want to stop the video. So that's Cindy's gone. I'm going to bring in Jim. If he can, there he is. Perfect timing. Jim, just as I make a general announcement, I should mention to people that they're listening or watching the Blaine's World podcast, and we're heard every week here on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, you name it. You can also see us on Facebook, YouTube. If you're looking for us, you can find us. I should mention that my guest this second half of the show is Jim. I'll try to get Karegeannes. Is that it? Am I close?
That's perfect.
Okay, great. Jim Karegeannes. And Jim is an interesting guy, as you'll just see in a second. He's founder and owner of North Asheville Tea Garden, also a firm called Brown Dog Press. And Jim, what you can do is you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. That's Jim. And Jim is originally from South Carolina. He came to North Carolina in the 1980s to attend medical school. His family has been here since 1999. He's co-owner of Brown Dog Press, North Asheville Tea Garden. He's a lover of books and growing tea plants. In his spare time, you're also a doctor, I understand, as well?
Still in practice, yes.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about that. First of all, as a kid, you grew up then, is from South Carolina. Did you always know you wanted to be, first of all, a doctor? When did you decide that?
No, I think in high school. So, I came from a long line of father was an engineer, grandfather and his brother ran a coin laundromat, but my grandfather was the one who fixed all the equipment when it broke. We always had cars to work on. My father had a woodworking shop, so good with my hands, liked science, did well in school. Medicine seemed kind of fun, applied science, rather than just, I tried lab stuff and it just didn't appeal to me working in a lab. So doing something practical with my hands worked well. Got to medical school, thought I'd be a surgeon, didn't know what kind. When you go through that process of medical school, you're exposed to lots of different subspecialties, and you kind of find your tribe, the group of people that think like you, act like you. And I found some orthopedic surgeons that were having a lot of fun doing what they did. In the past, it has been a specialty populated by old college athletes,
Right.
mostly football players, to do
Right.
the physical work needed to do it. It's changed, in the 25 years I've been doing it. More reflective now of the general population, but And I was not a college football player, I'll say that, but just fun. And it worked well with the skill set that I had. And I've had a good run. It's been very enjoyable.
But you're still
Still
doing
in
surgery.
practice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In my late 50s. So I got a few more years to go.
Well, what I found fascinating about you though, Jim, so you had this business as a surgeon and you're still being a surgeon, but all of a sudden then you decided to get into some other fields. And let's talk about both of them because they're kind of interesting, I think. Brown Dog, first of all, is so you're involved with a publishing outfit?
Yeah, and that's an outgrowth of a couple of other kind of things I liked. One reason I chose Asheville to practice is my wife and I are both from Spartanburg, South Carolina, from the upstate, so an hour and 10 minutes from Asheville, and our families are still there, or at least our parents, our mothers are still there. So we're back and forth quite often, so that was nice. You can grow stuff in Asheville. At the time I came here, I was a big wine guy and I thought wine was neat and I was going to grow grapes and you could do that. And I had looked all into how to do that in the Southeast and actually did that when I came here. First thing I did when I got a house was get a tiller and dig up part of the yard and order some grapevines from a nursery in New York. And I grew grapes. And then, the bears found them. Right. And they would sort of get ripe and then the bears would come and I'd have no grapes that year or the next year or the next year. So that it was interesting. I'll point out, we're in Asheville, Biltmore Estate has a winery. They had a beautiful vineyard right off I-26 and it's all grass and has cattle grazing on it now. It is very hard to grow grapes profitably in the Southeast. There's not labor to do it. There's disease pressure. There's lots of fungal disease. It rains a lot here. So it was hard to do. So as much as I wanted to do it, it didn't work.
And then you mentioned something interesting off the air. We'll tie into the tea business. But one of the nice things about the tea business, at least you said, is that no animals go after the tea.
Yeah, that's right. I had a fig tree. Karegeannes is Greek, right? So Greeks always plant a fig tree. Had a fig on it. It's beautiful. One day I go to work and there's no fig. The limb's broken and there's just this little bitten off end of a fig. Some raccoon or something got in it. We have wild blueberries in the woods behind our house. Every year I watch them get ripe, and then all in one night they're gone. I mean, the bushes are fine. There's just no berry anywhere. So there's lots of predation in this area. The bears, the possums, the raccoons. We're in North Asheville, which is in the Beaver Dam Valley, which has not had deer in the 23 years we lived there until last year. And then deer show up. Well, they browse everything. But it's been interesting. I had some tea plants out. It's been 2 years now. Sorry. And this summer I had some bushes out and they have flower. They flower in the fall and then seeds develop. This nice round green pod. And a little adolescent bear was walking through them and he kind of bit one of the seed pods, dropped it and kept walking. They're real bitter. And I had 2 deer go through that same area and they kind of sniffed and just kept going. And I saw that and I thought, this is great.
So that's when you decided, so tea, instead of being figs, or some other thing that people eat, tea, like I said, nobody eats tea per se.
It sure does. It grows here. And there's a history of it going back into the 19th century of people growing not in Asheville, but in upstate South Carolina, eastern North Carolina, of course, in Charleston. That's where I'm actually sitting now when we're talking. The first commercially viable tea farm that, mass-produced tea is down here in Charleston. So there's a regional history of growing it. As you go up in altitude, it gets colder, and so that can be challenging for the plants. Beaver Dam Valley is about 2,000 feet above sea level, and the place that grows some of the best oolong teas in the world is in Taiwan at 2,000 feet. And so wouldn't it be great if I could make a tea comparable, or maybe even not comparable, but approaching the quality of what's made in Taiwan and do it locally?
So how do you learn to be a tea grower?
The growing's easy. So they're camellia plants. And
right.
So as I walk around Asheville, I take my dog and walk around Asheville. There's a church downtown on Church Street. There's camellia bushes, not Camellia sinensis, which is the tea plant, but Camellia japonica probably, or Camellia sasanqua, the 2 flowering bushes. They're 12 feet high. They're fine. They've been there for years and years. I work at a mission hospital most of the time. And then one of the turnarounds where you drop off patients, same thing, there's 8-foot high camellia bushes that are fine. So they grow here. We just haven't done it to make tea. It's hard to make enough tea. You have to, labor is really, the labor involved in picking, it has to be done by hand, little tiny leaves taking off the bush. And that's been the biggest thing in every place it's been grown, is having the labor to do it. So that's prevented people. Plus, there's more profitable crops you can grow if you really have to make a living. I don't have to make a living off of it, so that relieves a huge amount of pressure on a project like this. It's a hobby.
Well, describe the project then, though. It's fascinating because I have to admit, you're the first guy I ever met who is a tea grower.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things I learned, I'll give you the whole genesis of it. One, my wife's a tea drinker, and I care very much for her. And it's nice to have a project that we're together and can work on, even though I drink a lot more coffee than tea. Doctor, tea or coffee to stay awake. But about 2 years ago, she said, "Oh, there's a talk at Dobra Tea down in Asheville." I think it was January. It was before the pandemic, and I was looking frantically through some slides. I think it was 2020. This is a man named Miles Kramer who's in charge. I think he was in charge of education, but I think he's been promoted now to be one of the managers. But Miles had invited Christine Parks from Camellia Forest Nursery in Chapel Hill. So Camellia Forest grows camellias. It's a family business. They're in the second generation now, but Christine's a nurse, but her husband owns the business. His family ran it. And they were growing ornamental camellias, and then Christine likes tea, so she started bringing in tea camellias, Camellia sinensis, and that's become a big part of their business. Well, she was invited to Dobra, and I think it was January 2020. I remember it was cold and gray, and to give a talk about growing tea in Asheville, in Western North Carolina. Now it's a different climate. They're a different growing zone in Chapel Hill and Carborough and Raleigh area. They're one zone greater than us, so it's warmer more, and doesn't get as cold at night, lower elevation. And when she was giving that talk, she brought out two things. One was a book someone wrote in 1844, essays on growing tea in America. And that guy was in Greenville, South Carolina that wrote that. Well, I thought, well, that's okay, cool, data point. And she has a client in Black Mountain who I have not been able to get in contact with, but who has bought plants from them and is growing tea in Black Mountain. And she doesn't have a lot of information about him, but she just said, he's successful from what I've heard. He's doing it as a garden plant, kind of like what I'm doing. So I thought, well, that guy does it. And the guy in Greenville wrote about it 100 something years ago. And, I could do that. If it grows, I'm going to do that. And so that's really was the genesis of it. And plus, our daughter was in school in Chapel Hill at the time. So we, could make a visit to her and swing by the nursery, pick up some plants and come back. Plants are $25 a piece. That's kind of expensive. It gets hard to have enough plants. You want about, a minimum of 50 plants, but I'm trying to get about 200 going.
Now, that's
a lot of money.
In Asheville, you're trying to do this?
I am. You can put 3,000 to 4,000 an acre. Then we have a 3/4 acre lot. We're in the city on this is around my house. This is not a separate farm. So, trying to get 200 to make it, when you start processing it, you need volume. It's a lot of effort to take the tea and process it, and take the tea leaves and process it into tea. So if you're going to do it, you want to have enough material to work on to make it worthwhile each time you do it. So, 100 plants is that, but I think we'll have 200 if I'm spreading them out and making them look like hedges and things to fit into the landscape. But that's a lot to have $25 a plant. You can get them for $4 a plant from a wholesale nursery in Greensboro, but they're landscape plants. They're not necessarily, you don't really know where they came from. And so I wouldn't do that. And plus they wouldn't sell to me unless I bought, 1,000 or something.
Well, the other advantage I would think to this business for you is also keeps you in pretty good shape, I would imagine, if you're.
I dig a mean hole. Yeah.
I was going to say planting all these. It's a lot of plants.
That's a whole nother aspect, is figuring out how to grow them. But we go to South Carolina where tea grows in Charleston, and we gather seeds and bring them back. And that's been a big chunk of what we've had are plants we've grown from seed. They're called South Carolina heritage plants. They've been there for over 100 years. They interbreed, and so they're kind of a mix of all sorts of tea plants that were brought into the country in the 1800s. So we have a lot of those. And we've had fun tracking down. There's little pockets of tea plants all around. There's some in Spartanburg we found. There's some in Tarboro, North Carolina, which is just beyond Raleigh. We had a fun trip there in October to find some plants.
Must have been very exciting for you then. So
it's fun. Yeah, it's a nice diversion from work.
But especially the first year you planted them, then they grew, right? They were
Yep.
successful automatically.
They have been, yeah. The challenge was this past Saturday when it was -2 degrees.
Right. What do you do? What do you do when that happens?
You just watch them and keep your fingers crossed. In the spring, flower, they're evergreen, so the leaves are still on. The leaves get kind of wilty when it gets cold like that, but what usually happens, they have a very extensive root system, especially when you grow from seed. They have a tap root like an oak tree that goes down 2 or 3 feet, so that doesn't die unless the ground freezes. But that won't happen here. The ground has to freeze solid down to 8-10 inches. I mean, it's nice. It's not going to happen in Asheville, but so if the top of the plant dies, they'll come back. They won't be as big, and it'll take longer to get them up. But we'll just see. We'll have to see. I have several varieties. I bought several different varieties from the Camellia forest, including plants from Russia, the Black Sea, and the Caucasus region. Plants from Taiwan to make oolong, and some plants from China and Korea, where it gets even colder than we do. So we'll see how they do. Plus, I have my South Carolina hybrids.
Can folks do anything to keep the plants warm, or is there anything you can do?
I mean, you can, but part of the reason of growing a plant that didn't have a lot of predation and doesn't have a lot of disease pressure is I don't want to use chemicals on them. When I had the grapes, I had some Cabernet Franc I put out, and that's a European grape. It gets fungus. You have to treat it. I had to buy this terribly expensive systemic fungicide. And I started thinking, do I want to drink wine made from grapes that have a systemic fungicide? Well, no, I don't. And plus I had little children. This was 20 years ago, and they're adults now, but I don't want them playing in a yard with that. And then we got some little dogs, little dachshund mix, and they're 2 inches off the ground. I don't want them in the chemicals. And so I've decided if I'm going to grow it, it's going to be, not that it's a buzzword, I just don't want to spray chemicals on a bunch of stuff. That's how I feel about the plants, the tea plants. Tea plants will live for hundreds of years. There's some in Charleston at the Kaw Interpretive Center that are over 100 years old. They're naturalized. There's pine trees growing up around them, and the plants, they do fine. So that's what I thought. I wanted something that'll just go that I don't have to mess with.
Talk about what happened 2 years ago. So you plant them the first time, they grow, and what do you do after they've grown? What happens?
It takes about 3 to 5 years from a seed to get a mature enough plant. You want them about 2 or 3 feet high, about waist high. They'll go 10 to 12 feet if you don't do anything with them, but you keep them at a workable height so you can pluck. You make tea from the new growth. The leaves can be woody, and so they're hard. You can't have a woody leaf. They're bitter, but they also are hard. They'll crumble up. So you want the soft, tender growth. The first 2 or 3 leaves that come out from the end of a branch, and so that starts about Easter time, mid-April, late March, early April, depending. Late March in South Carolina, probably mid-April for us. So you'll go around and they call it plucking, but you pull off the little bud that's the new growth, and 2 or 3 leaves below that, depending on how soft they are. Gather those up, and that's your base that you'll make your tea from. You then do some processing beyond that. You have to make green or black, depending on how you do it. There's enzymes. Think about that. If you cut an apple, it starts to turn brown. If you leave it in oxygen, a banana does that. That's a polyphenol oxidase, is an enzyme in fruit that's causing browning. And so that's what makes black tea. And so that you want to encourage. You crush up the leaves. You don't really crush them. They call it rolling. It takes a while, but you rub around in your hands. In the old days, now there's rolling machines that do that break it all up and break open the cells and release the polyphenol oxidase to start oxidizing the chemicals in the leaf to turn them brown, and that gives you flavors that come out as other chemicals are altered. That's making black tea. To make green tea, you don't want that to happen, so you want to kill the enzyme, the polyphenol oxidase. So you do it, you pluck them, you let them sit for a while to soften. That's called withering, and then you treat them with heat to a certain level to kill the enzyme, that particular enzyme, but not other enzymes that will form some of the flavor compounds. So you steam them, or you plunge them in boiling water, like you would if you're blanching a vegetable. You want to keep it green and crisp. You don't want it to brown, so you put it in boiling water for 3 minutes. Take it out, shock it with cold water, and then you've got a nice green piece of asparagus that still has some structure to it, but won't turn brown on the plate. So that's the way, part of the basis of making green tea is to stop that browning process, and then you do other things to bring out the flavors.
So back up on the process, you'd mentioned that it takes, what takes 5 years, or were you doing this
To
after
get
the first?
plant mature from a seed, it takes about 5 years. So that's the advantage of spending $25 for a plant. It's already 2 years old.
Oh, okay, got you. So after you did this, the first time, you were already processing the tea, is that correct? And
Well, so when you get the plants, first you have to grow them, and
Right.
there's also, how to fertilize them, water them. You have to prune them to maximize the number of little branches that'll have a piece of new leaf to pluck. You got to learn all that stuff, and then you have 3 years basically to figure out how to process. Well, the brown dog press thing really got going when I thought, well, I need to figure out how to process them. So I started looking through text. So there are some new textbooks that can help you with that. It's very mechanized, chemical intensive, biochemical intensive information, something tough for an amateur, that would be me, to deal with. So I said, well, I'm gonna go back and look at stuff that's out of copyright, published before 1933, in the 1800s and early 1900s. They're still making tea then. So, and there are numerous manuals in English and French and Portuguese and maybe some in Spanish. Haven't encountered those yet, but on how to process tea. Before, they had a lot of the chemistry worked out, but they had techniques that got them where they wanted to be. So I thought, well, that would be a good thing to know. So Portuguese is tough. I had some Spanish in high school, a little bit of Latin in college, but my wife speaks French. So I thought, I'm going to start with the French stuff. And so she kind of helped me interpret some things. And then I found the articles I wanted to through the French National Library is an amazing resource. They've digitized unbelievable numbers of things in their collection. It's freely available. So you can pull things off, and then you can go and translate either through Google Translate for newer things. You have to hire someone to do the older stuff because the language has changed a bit. But you get some great information from that. And so the Brown Dog Press became the opportunity to take that information that I got and make it available to other people. There's other ways to do that, but I like books. My wife's a librarian. My daughter was an English major. My mother was an English major. We're book people. And so I wanted to put it out in a form that I liked and was proud of. And now with print on demand, I don't have to print them. I just have to put it all together as a PDF and put it up on a site where anyone who wants a copy can order a copy, and 2-3 days later it'll show up. So that's been a really neat thing. So we're going at.
Right. I'm sorry, that's the Brown Dog Press part of the business.
Correct. Yeah. So Brown Dog, because we have
Right.
a Brown Dog, but also it's going to be tea, coffee, and cocktails. Well, tea's brown, coffee's brown, and I like brown liquors
So
over vodka.
the North Asheville Tea Garden, then, is that?
That's a proposed name. So
Gotcha.
eventually we'll get this thing going. I hope it'll probably be, another 3 years to have the plants big enough. I'm processing tea now, but we were pointed to some plants that are growing in Spartanburg, South Carolina. They were planted as landscape plants along the interstate, the old interstate. It's a state road now, but these plants are not tended to. They just grow. They're about 6 feet tall. We're 5 or 6 feet tall now. And so you just kind of park and go and pluck. And that's been a way to get some material to let me practice. So I have 2 or 3 years of doing that to kind of get the skill down and how to actually process them correctly. I don't have to worry about, anything watering them or any of that. They're on their own and they're doing fine down there. It rains a lot and the temperature's really good for the growth there.
How'd you learn how to do all this?
So as I search around and look for things, that sort of got me involved in the U.S. tea industry, which is very, very small but growing. The first place I stumbled on was the U.S. League of Tea Growers, started about 5 or 6 years ago with the idea of being an organization of professional tea growers, people who ran companies. So it was started by several people in Mississippi and Louisiana. So great story, and I'll give it to you to give them a shout out. The two men who run the Great Mississippi Tea Company came to South Carolina, visited the Charleston Tea Gardens, which are down here in Charleston, owned by Bigelow. That has a whole history of its own, which is really interesting. It goes back over 100 years now. And they saw that. They were in their early 30s, and they said, well, we can grow tea. One of them had inherited some land in lower Mississippi, old cattle farm from his family when his grandfather passed away. And about 10 years ago this year, they went back and they kind of threw themselves into it. And, they now have this commercial tea farm that's profitable, and, they're advocates for it. They got together with a physician like me in Louisiana who has 50 tea plants in his garden in New Orleans and makes tea from it. And another fellow in Alabama who was the county historian who found some tea plants at the Auburn Experimental Station when they decided they weren't going to carry on with that project and were tearing it up and put them on a burn pile. He pulled about 6 plants off the burn pile, took them back, and now he has, I think it's 10 or 15,000 plants growing in Alabama that he makes tea from. And he just does it for himself, that's been his hobby over the years. He's probably in his early 70s now, but they got together and formed this U.S. League of Tea Growers. Small fee to join each year. I signed up, started getting emails, and these guys in Mississippi also have something called the U.S. Tea Experience they put together. Very entrepreneurial. It's really great to see. They're really throwing themselves into it. But they've gotten together with a retired professor of food technology from Cornell, who's a physician, but didn't want to be a physician. She wanted to be a biochemist. So they've gotten together with her, and then a man who helped them set up their farm, a consultant from Scotland. I believe he's from Scotland. He's from the UK, who's been in the business since the 50s or 60s, all over the world, setting up commercial industrial tea operations and consulting now. So they do Zoom talks. So last year I went through their series of classes on green tea making, black tea making, oolong making, yellow tea making. And that really gave me a great basis. They've set it up really well. The Zoom talks go for about an hour. It's, I can't remember the number. I think it's 5 or 6 classes for each one, depending on how much material to cover. Virginia Udemuller is the professor. She'll give the background, the basic science, which I actually understand. I learned it all 20 years ago and then put it away, but that's been really good to help me understand. And then Jason and Timmy will go through the practical aspects of gathering the tea and paying the labor and keeping things clean and and all this. How do you package it? How do you sell it? So that was really great. So I learned all that, and then just coincidence, my stepbrother, brother-in-law in Spartanburg, who's a horticulturist, said, "Oh yeah, we have tea plants growing. We planted some out on the interstate. I don't know, nobody does anything with them." I was like, "Oh, well, where exactly would those be?" And when we found them, we were down several times last year plucking there and using what I'd learned in the class.
Jim, do you see this, I don't know, call it hobby, passion, whatever you want to call it, of yours becoming like, I was telling you bees, everybody's into bees now, and it becoming a big thing for people to do. Do you see tea growing being like that?
It could be, and I'll tell you why. In the 1800s, there was a big push by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They would import tea seeds from China and distribute them freely. And they had a greenhouse on the mall, of all places, in Washington, where they would set up, and they had several plants. They were trying to introduce plants to this is all before the Civil War when it started, 1850s. So if you send a letter to the USDA in Washington and said, "I'd like some tea seeds," they'd send you 30 seeds. The idea was to get homesteaders to plant tea plants to cut down there's no tea in the US, it was all imported, so they wanted to cut down on that. They did it with sugar. They tried to introduce sugar production in the US to cut down all the sugar we imported. So they tried to introduce sorghum as a source of sugar. They introduced cane sugar to Florida and Louisiana and those areas. But they introduced tea as well. And recently, when I'm not working and it's late at night or early in the morning and I'm awake, I'll get on and go through newspaper archives from that time. And you'll find reports of people in Granville County, North Carolina, growing tea, Wilmington, North Carolina, growing tea, Georgetown, South Carolina, growing tea, Louisiana. This is all 1850, 1860. I haven't shared this with them, but the fellows in Mississippi are in Brookhaven, Mississippi. Well, you know, I found this report in an old Southern cultivator from 1866 about someone in Brookhaven, Mississippi growing tea on his plantation. There's a guy in Georgia, just below Savannah, who's got some seeds from the USDA in 1860 and grew them through the Civil War and harvested until about 1866 or 1867. Sherman came through, burned everything down to the ground. And so he sold about then and moved to Athens, Georgia, and gave up his tea growing. But the plants persisted up to about 1900. Some of them were moved to Summerville, South Carolina, and formed the basis for the tea plantation started by another physician who was a pathology professor at the medical school in Charleston, retired, started a huge tea farm, 200 acres. Most of it's now the Summerville Country Club golf course. But he had tea plants all over that, ran it till 1915 when he died. The plants sat, the land got sold to the country club. Some got developed into a housing development, you know, with nice old houses built in the 1950s. And then Clemson came in and plants were still there. They took those and grew them, and that formed the basis for the Charleston Tea Plantation plant, which, you know, they have 50,000 plants now, all tracing their way back. I haven't worked it out altogether, but they probably go back to the plants from Liberty County, Georgia in the 1860s. So it's really neat. So they grow. And so, yes, you can grow them, and people were growing them in small little areas to make tea. I found one report of someone who had 30 plants, and they said it was enough to make tea for their family on their family farm. This was, again, from 1870s, 80s, something like that. So it'd be kind of neat. It's not that hard to do.
But let me ask you this, in terms of not being hard to do, how much time do you put into this?
You know, it's one nice thing is it's an agricultural product. So you do it in the summer when the plants are growing, and then the plants stop. As soon as it gets cold, they don't grow, you don't pluck. October, when they go to seed, they flower in October. So that's when you stop. And so there's a period of time for 5 months of the year that you're doing it and working. And when you pick, you've got a set time you have to do things. They wither for so long, you roll for so long, they oxidize for so long, you dry for so long. It's a 18 to 24 hour process, and maybe longer depending on the style you're going for. But so you have to dedicate a weekend to doing that. So a weekend every 3 weeks during the summer. And you could skip, if you don't want to do it, just skip, and then take a shear and just prune, like a hedge, just prune them off, and whatever, you miss that growth.
Yeah,
and then in the fall, you don't do anything. In fall and winter, you don't do anything with them.
Except other times you have to speak to them, or
Yeah. You do all the fun stuff. Then you go and sell it. Not that I'm doing that now, but if you sell it, well, you go to trade shows, and this U.S. League of Tea Growers has a convention every year. It alternates East Coast, West Coast. It was in the West Coast this year, and that was October, I think, late October, early November. So, you go and get together with like-minded people and share stories, and you do what I'm doing now, which is, go through old newspaper archives, trying to find interesting information, or more books that might have information that people would enjoy if you shared with them.
Jim, if folks want to get smarter about this, or not specifically smarter about this, if they want to contact you, for example, could they contact you for more information?
They can. We have a website, browndogpress.com. It's all one word. And I can also be reached at jim@browndogpress.com. The contact information is on the website. If you search on Brown Dog Press, they'll find that. There are several Brown Dog Presses. We have the URL for browndogpress.com. They're little hobby things. There's one in England. There's one that does greeting cards on Etsy that uses the name. Probably didn't think hard enough about it when we came up with it, but we were in the car going to the attorney to get it registered, and the dog was with us. So that's the name. BrownDogPress.com.
By the way, is your dog brown also?
He is. He's beautiful. So he's a coonhound mix. So he's brown and white.
And so let me ask you a final question here. If folks want to get smarter about growing tea, why do you think that's a good idea for people to not only grow tea, but kind of drink tea?
Well, I'm older. And so I drank oceans of beer when I was young. And I can't do that anymore. Two drinks, I can drink about 2 nights in a row, and then my stomach bothers me. I can't have more than 2 drinks at once because, tea doesn't do that. It has a little bit of caffeine, and that kind of perks you up. You don't want to have it too late at night, but it's a great thing to have in the morning. I think it's important for people to understand the process of what they're consuming. We didn't really get into that. It's becoming a thing in the wine industry.
Right.
You know, who pays the wine picker? What kind of quality of life? In tea, it can be brutal. The people that pick tea are the lowest. The Indian government, most tea comes from India now, you know, has protections in effect for the women. It's all hand picked, and they're paid by the weight they pick, and they don't get paid much, and so there's no advancement for them. Their families, it's hard, and so it's good to know. Some of the people that grow up professionally will say, you have to manage your pickers. You know, Americans, they're not going to pick tea for 8 hours. And when you start doing it, it's a lot of fun for about 45 minutes.
Right.
And then it's work. There's
Well, that's what I'm
bugs.
saying. In a couple of years, yeah, it's going to be great. You'll be ready.
So you have to have the more to it. You have to, I think, take more from it than just cracking out an agricultural product. And there is that. There's groups of people who are quite interested in their tea, and you know, they're interesting people. Like finding my tribe of subspecialty, you know, doctors. You find a tribe of people to socialize with that are interesting to be with. I think that's a big aspect of it. I used to get a newsletter from a group of wine book collectors. This is a long time ago, and they had a quote from a woman who ran a bookshop in Maryland, I think, and she sold wine books and gardening books. She said, you know, the wine people, they're like so stern. And the gardening book people, well, they're just happy. So that's one aspect of it. The tea people I've met, we went down to Mississippi in May and met with the guys there and spent a day on their farm and made and worked, and they're just fun. And then somebody from Canada came in. They were going to a trade show after we left, and you know, it's a group of people. We have fun. We go to Camellia Forest. We know one of the workers there. We always check in with her. It's just, you know, you're outdoors. Something grows that you make happen with your own hands. Create a product that you're proud of. It's a good way to spend your time.
I'd like
I
to,
think.
if people are interested in spending the time about this, or certainly finding out more about it, they could reach Jim again one more time, the website.
It's browndogpress.com.
Okay. I'd like to thank Jim. Let's see if I have it right. Karegeannes, is that it? Close enough?
That's right. Yeah.
Karegeannes being my guest, the second half hour of the Blaine's World podcast. Also, Cindy Pike being my guest the first half hour, as well as to Cappy Tassetti, my producer. Look forward to having you join us each week here on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Spotify, you name it, you can find us. Jim, thanks for being my guest this second half hour. Be well. And I'll just sign off and stay with me 1 second.